So Genie is a really fun Christmas movie from Richard Curtis, who directed arguably one of the most beloved Christmas movies ever, which was Love Actually, and he also was a writer for the Mr. Bean movies, which I've got a real soft spot for, as I absolutely loved Rowan Atkinson in all of the Mr. Bean TV shows as well as the film. And this film acts as a remake of the really popular 90s movie called Bernard and the Genie, which involved a sorcerer and also, incidentally, had Rowan Atkinson in it and Lenny Henry, so it was a true comedic brilliant film from the 90s, and this is a reimagining with arguably the role that Melissa McCarthy was born to play, which is a genie, and she is just absolutely hilarious. And I love the little references that they've got towards Aladdin, as well as I Dream of Genie, which was another incredibly popular TV series. And one of the things I absolutely loved in this movie was the fact that the genie is able to grant unlimited amounts of wishes, so you're not limited to 3, which is very typical in a bit of a genie scenario, whereas this time there are unlimited amounts. And they did do quite a lot of different scenarios with all of the wishes. If anything, I would have just wanted a little bit more, but I do have to say that they did do pretty well with it. And I think it's a really great testament to show how much cinematography and VFX in particular have just advanced and developed lately, as films that have a relatively modest budget before did struggle with making this feel really believable. But I feel like this film has done it in a really, really good way, as you would believe that Melissa McCarthy is suddenly a genie and that this lead character of Bernard and a couple of other characters as well are able to have their dreams come true, as all of their wishes can become a reality. So like I said, from a VFX point of view, this movie is actually really impressive, and there's a famous quote to say that nobody does Christmas like New York, and I have to say New York City really does come to life quite literally in such a cool way. Firstly because of all of the magical stuff, and secondly because I just feel like it's such a nice backdrop for such a really cool Christmas setting. And speaking of Bernard, I actually feel like he is a really relatable character in terms of a lot of people do struggle with balancing work with a home life, and when this adversely affects your relationships, I feel like the audience can definitely relate to this from a number of different scenarios of, you know, work creeping, especially in terms of a big moment like he has with his daughter and of course with Christmas time as well. And I feel like they've resolved everything by the end of this movie in a really, really clever way, and they had definitely sprinkled the seeds for the twist that happens right at the end in a really brilliant way. So if you've watched Manifest, it definitely reminded me a little bit of how they wrapped everything up by the end of that series. And some people might be like, what? Where on earth did that come from? But like I said, I feel like they sprinkled the seeds across this movie really, really well. One sequence that I don't think worked as well as they intended it to was all of the police jail stuff. As if anything, I feel like all of that detracted from the film and all of the enjoyment and all of the magic allure and fun of having a genie in your fingertips. I mean, I can see what they were trying to do in terms of teaching the main character a lesson and really showing that, you know, it's not all hunky-dory, you know, sometimes things can have consequences. I just feel like it just went on for so long. But like I said, it just felt a little bit out of pace in terms of how it was executed, because it wasn't as funny as maybe they were intending it to be, and I don't think the lessons were being learned either. And I think also the sequences, even though it was wrapped up relatively quickly, it just felt like it did drag on within the small amount of time that it did go on. And it did kind of take you out of this whole magical experience that you were having with this film. And speaking of which, like I also mentioned before, I feel like they could have added a couple more magical sequences in this movie to make it even more powerful, no pun intended. But that being said, I feel like this movie is pretty successful as being a bit of a Hallmark-esque enjoyable Christmas movie that has a really solid storyline and a really great group of characters, and they are all performing really, really well. And so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give Genie a solid 7 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear what you thought of this film, so please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.